Welcome to FN 553. This is Case Studies in Financial Management. I'm your online instructor, Diana Block, and I'll be working with you over the next 5 weeks as we analyze some financial cases that'll give you a great overview of a lot of the problems that you may run into in corporate finance, in your careers, or just as a manager in a business in general that has some financial duties. So, first of all, I want to point out before we get started, there are some announcements in the class, and I've got that pulled up here for you to see. The Unit 1 announcements includes instructions on accessing the course ebooks, the APA requirements for master's level work, the homework guidelines, the grading rubric, and the instructions for the final case paper. Just click on this link to get to all that information. Review this information right away. It'll save you a lot of time and headache because you'll know exactly what we're looking for in the assignments on the final paper. All of the requirements and grading guidelines are laid out there for you, so you know exactly what we're looking for in this master's level course. And also take note that there are 2 books. You will have a corporate finance textbook we'll do a lot of reading out of, and then you'll also have the case book that'll have the actual cases that we're going to discuss and that you're going to turn in assignments on. The other thing that I want to point out to you right up front is the additional learning resources at the bottom here, are the additional learning resources that are here at the bottom of each unit. And this is going to be some great information to help summarize the information you're reading in the chapter. And it also gives you some additional information about the case that we'll be working on each week. So this week you're going to turn in an assignment on the Krispy Kreme case, and there's some additional information here that you will want to use and incorporate into your evaluation of this firm. All of these videos are going to summarize a lot of the ratios that are discussed in the chapter and give you a visual of how those problems are being solved. So that's going to enhance your textbook reading. So let's get right into the week 1 assignments. You have 5 chapters to read week 1, and this is a master's level class, so it's going to move fast, but you're going to read chapters 1 through 4 and 14. So those chapters, the first couple are just going to give you a foundation of corporate finance and explain finance's role in the organization, and some background information. And then those last 3 chapters are really going to talk to you a lot about financial statements and ratios. And you've probably seen some of this before in undergraduate classes or other finance classes that you've taken. So the first couple of chapters is most likely going to be review material for you. And then we're going to get into those, like I said, those later chapters, some specific calculations and things that you'll want to use in your case for this week. So let's look at the requirements for this week. You're going to read those 5 chapters, and then you're going to read case 8, which is the Krispy Kreme case, as we discussed, and you're going to work on that. And then the discussion case is going to be case 12, Guna Fibers. So you'll read both of those cases in addition to all of the textbook reading. And remember, you're going to review all these videos as well. But I want to talk here about the actual assignment and kind of help you get started on that. So when we're looking at this Krispy Kreme case, case 8, and you're going to follow the master's analysis paper guidelines, of course, but included in that, you're going to kind of address these bullet pointed issues here. So the first bullet point item is asks you for an assessment of the firm's financial health as of 2004. So it wants you to, based on the financial statements, give an analysis of their financial health, look at the trends and the ratios. You don't have to get a discussion of every single line item, but pick out what you believe to be the several key strengths or weaknesses of this firm and explain those. And then from those, draw a conclusion about the firm's health. So when we're talking about analyzing or assessing a firm's health, let's look at how we would go about doing that. How do we assess a firm's health? So, your textbook is going to talk to you about some things to assess their health, and I'm going to give you my perspective as well on how to get started with that. I say to start with the balance sheet. So, you've got all this in your textbook, but I'm just going to take some notes here, is basically what I'm going to say. Start with the balance sheet. So, what do I want to look for on the balance sheet? On the balance sheet, we want to look at their shareholder equity, and we want to examine their assets and their liabilities. That's what's on the balance sheet. Within the assets and liabilities, we've also got what we call current assets and current liabilities. These are the items that have to be paid or will be turned into cash within the next 12 months. Of course, current assets being the assets that will be turned into cash within the next 12 months or expected business cycle. Most of the time, we're talking about 12 months. And then the current liabilities are those bills that expect to be paid within the next 12 months. And the current assets and current liabilities is going to give you a couple of important things. The difference between them is our net working capital, and then our current assets divided by our current liabilities is going to give us our current ratio, which is a measure of liquidity. So we're going to start off with the balance sheet and start grabbing some information off of there, definitely, to do an assessment of a company's financial health. Another thing you're going to want to look at is the book value. What about the book value of this firm? The reason book value is important is because this is basically the value of the shareholders' stake in the company. The book value is made up basically of the capital contributed by the shareholders over time and any profits that have been earned and retained by the company. So if we subtract the total liabilities from the assets, what we're left with is shareholder equity, which is basically the book value of the firm. So we want to know what value, what stake the shareholders actually have in this company. Then we want to look at the bottom line. Is this firm profitable? The bottom line tells you the company's financial position. It tells you the general well-being of the company. And any serious investor or stakeholder will want to understand whether or not this company is profitable and what the profitability trends are. So these are three very short steps to assess the financial well-being of a company. But of course, for each one of these, there's a lot more involved in order to deal with each of these appropriately. And one way that we kind of put all of this stuff that is included in these into perspective is by using ratio analysis. So what you're going to do is calculate a set of ratios, and there's financial statements included in all the cases related to this type of analysis, and you're going to calculate the ratios that you're going to find most important. Now, I already mentioned some liquidity ratios because I mentioned the current ratio, and I talked about how that is calculated by using the current assets and the current liabilities. If you divide current assets by current liabilities, you get a current ratio, which tells you how well the company would be able to pay their current obligations, which is important information. A company that can't pay its current bills is in serious financial trouble right off top. So there are other liquidity ratios as well, and you're going to read those, how you can change the current ratio to the quick ratio or the cash ratio. It also talks about how you can calculate the cash conversion cycle. Some other ratios that you may want to look at in your analysis are your debt ratios. So included in your debt ratios, you're going to have the debt to equity, interest coverage ratio. There's a few things that are included in that category, and again, you're going to read about all of these in your textbook reading over this week. But the overview is that debt, of course, is financial obligations of the firm. And so it's important for us to understand how the firm is managing and handling and using debt if we're going to assess the uh, financial health of the company. So we definitely will want to look at some liquidity ratios. Pretty sure you're going to want to look at some debt ratios as well. And then you're probably going to want to look at some operating performance type ratios. Um, this is going to be things like fixed asset turnover. Um, and so, what that is going to measure for you is how efficiently the management is running the firm, the day to day operational things. How are they taking care of those? So, you'll want to examine some of those. You'll also probably want to be interested in some cash flow. You want to know how their cash is being managed. And later in the case, there's going to be another question to come up about the price earnings ratio. So we're going to call those um, investment valuation ratios. So these are things like the price book ratio, price earnings ratio, price to sales ratio, just depending on which one you think is the most important in this particular case. But what you're doing is looking at the price and comparing it to something else. What is the price compared to the book value? What is the price compared to earnings? What is the price compared to earnings growth? And so if you look at on all of these different categories of ratios, and again, there's multiple ratios inside of each of these. But if you start off with the balance sheet, the book value, and the bottom line, that will cause you to want to investigate certain things that you're going to find in each of those. You'll investigate those by determining which ratios you want to do further analysis on, which ratios you want to calculate. Once you calculate those ratios, then that will lead you to further investigation on the ratios that you feel require more information, to track down the actual formulas that go into those ratios and what factor is causing that ratio to be out of line of what you think it should be. So there's a lot of information in these chapters. Like I said, you're going to read 5 chapters this week. You're going to get a lot of ratios. You're going to get a review of the financial statements. I mean, just a wealth of information. But when you're looking at this case, what are the specific questions that are being asked? Assess the financial health of the firm. So decide where you want to start. Like I said, I'm going to start with the balance sheet, the book value, and the bottom line, and then go from there and see where that leads you. You aren't going to be able to give every single ratio, every single data point, but certain things will strike you as needing additional explanation, and that's what you'll dive into. Then you've got another bullet point here. We need an explanation of some factors not shown on the financial statements that have caused the price of this stock to fall. And in your reading, you're going to learn about market perceptions and analysts' predictions and how that affects stock prices as well. And so there are some factors that are not easily read from the financial statements that will explain why a stock price is going to fall. And then you're going to provide your justification why a stock price can fall, even though the statements may show good health in specific areas. You're going to use at least 2 credible sources. One of them needs to be your textbook. You're going to give great citations using APA formatting, and if you have any questions about that, of course, just email me and we can talk about it. So this is the week 1 assignment. This is our break in the ice assignment getting started. And then I also want to point out before I run out of time that on the discussion, we're going to talk about the Guna Fibers case. And we're going to kind of do the same thing. We're going to look at some financial statements and do some analysis around that. So kind of think along the same lines as I've discussed here for the class discussion as well. My 15 minutes is almost up, so I'm going to wish you a great week, and I hope to hear from you if you have any questions at all. Thanks.